YouTube, and we are live on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube. So let me preface this video, obviously based on the fact that a lot of people recently lost their job, including almost 600 agents, a bunch of offices, a bunch of managers, a lot of sales directors, marketing, creative, assistant managers, and then obviously there's a ton of people as well that are landlords that they were obviously renting from. So Town Residential, to anyone that's not familiar with the New York real estate landscape, they came onto board in 2010. They were like that shiny new ball. They were like they were like Compass. Compass. For me, I don't really hate on anyone new because they're trying out something different, or they're trying to bring a little frictionless back to the industry. A lot of agents, or a lot of people have said that agents bring a lot of friction to the transaction, which I 100% agree, is that you have a buyer, you have a seller, and you're trying to bring them together. So they're known as a broker. There's tons of brokers. That's what a broker does. It brokers the deal. And if you think about it, there's just a swath of industries that have been disrupted. Namely, you don't need anyone to buy a plane ticket to go anywhere. You don't need a travel agent. You don't need a stockbroker to buy stock. A real estate broker, it's going to be probably the largest transaction that you do in your life, unless you sell a company or you have a lot of, say, interest in a company and you sell their shares or whatever the case is. For me, I just want to make sure that I'm in focus on YouTube. For me, I see it as, I agree with it, and it's the marketplace. The marketplace is going to talk, and it's going to say what it needs to say. If real estate agents are not necessary, then there's going to be something that probably comes along and disrupts it. For me, I'm not one to look at the historics. I'm looking at the future and saying, okay, how do I actually get a little bit better? How do I actually bring, say instead of printing out a signed listing agreement and scanning it and then sending it to the client, they sign it, they scan it, then they send it back. Instead of adding all that garbage in, why don't you just do e-signature? Or instead of someone emailing you photos, here's a Google Drive link. You drop all the photos in there. Those are two basic ideas. So that's all a preface to what I'm about to talk about. So Town Residential, just give you some facts and figures about it. So Town Residential on Thursday said it was shuttering its doors. I'll just give you, obviously a little bit about it, so it gives you context. In 2015, it was the largest firm in Manhattan by agent count and sixth by dollar amount. Okay, that's a big deal. This isn't, a mom and pop shop. This was a major brokerage by Andrew Heilberg, who is actually part of City Habitats. Then he left, started in 2010, kind of like what I was saying before, started in 2010, grew this up. It was this cool, fancy lifestyle brand. They were the new kid on the block. And it was funny, when I was at when I was at Platinum Properties in 2011, so I started in 2009, and then I said, I want to go into sales, and I started emailing and talking to a bunch of people, and it came down to Town Residential, and funny enough, and Halstead Property. And I remember this conversation vividly, and thank my ex-girlfriend for saying, listen, do you want to go to a firm that is established in the industry, Halstead Property, or do you want to go to the new guy? And I always felt like the new guy. I always felt like someone that was, how you doing, Mark? I always felt like the guy that was maybe the underdog, So I looked at Town Residential. I'm like, this might fit, this might be something that I might be interested in. And I ended up going at Halstead Property. It obviously worked out, but I would have left anyway because I started BPI in 2014. So, but I started seeing the writing on the wall, and I hate cliches, but that's the only way to put it, is the simple fact that when I went from a salesperson to a broker. So a salesperson is someone that they can't start their own firm, but you have to take a test, you have to go back to school, you have to be in business for 2 years. It's nothing special. And then you could open up your own brokerage. And there's only one broker at every brokerage here in Manhattan. So when I opened it and I started talking, because you need to get, obviously, there's a ton of overhead. You start talking and you need the MLS, you need a website, you need to talk to REBNY, which is the Real Estate Board of New York. And then you start talking with agents, you start getting office space, you start getting equipment, and it starts adding up. And then all these monthly costs, I've already joked about it, but it's 100% true. I'm going to write a book on how not to start a business because I did everything wrong, to say the least. And I started seeing that real estate agents, it happened actually when I was at Halstead Property 2012, and Street Easy started becoming very popular. And I remember listening to the conversations of agents that were established. I was only 3 years into the industry, and I was looking up at these top brokers, doing, I don't know, like 50, 60 million in business. And I was saying, and they were worried about it, and I was nowhere near them. And I remember thinking, if they're worried about it, I should be worried about it. This whole Street Easy thing. And then I started looking at it, and you have two options, and I'll get into what happened with Town, because I've been calling this for 2 years, and I was actually having a conversation with Adam Bachner about this, because I just knew it was going to happen. So I'll get into a little bit more about how it happened, in that it just wasn't out of nowhere. They talk about 2007, 2006. There's things that led up to it. Lawsuits, missed rent. The amount of transactions went down 24% year over year. It was just there, but it wasn't led aggressively enough. And I talked about it, I think on Monday, is that the only reason a business fails is a lack of sales. A lack of sales. United went through a debacle, publicly. Their PR campaign was terrible, but they threw money at it because they had the money to throw at it, and now it's still in business. So if you have the reserves, if you have the money, if you have the sales, you're going to keep in business. If you drop 24% year over year when it was one of the best years last year, that's not good, okay? And I'll talk about a little bit more about the future. So I started saying, my overhead, even as a small business, is ridiculous. You have servers, you have websites, you have office space, you need to buy materials, printing. There's marketing, collateral, your videographer, I'm open to it. The thing was, I overspent. And one of the biggest, I would say, if someone's starting a business, I'll just give them this piece of advice, is that sales is good, brand is good. Marketing is good, brand is good, but look at the sales. And that was the problem with Town Residential, is that they weren't looking at their sales. They had office space. Their office space was, Town's alleged non-payment of $120,000 on 79th Street. That was I was there. I sold a place at Continental Towers, which is on 79th and 2nd. It's literally on the corner of 79th and 2nd. And are you kidding me? It was ground level. It was corner on 79th and 2nd. That's a major thoroughfare. I can't even talk right now. There's a couple of people outside the office. So they ended up shuttering that. And then they had a place on Astor Place. Astor Place is massive as well. You look up at it and it says Town Residential. So they overspent. Okay, number one. Number two is, a lot of people, they started not paying agents on time. Okay, that's a no-no, by far. Agents, we don't get a biweekly paycheck. We don't get taxes taken out. We don't have a 401k. It's all part of it. We signed up for it. I'm not complaining about that. But if I do a deal, I expect to get paid on a certain amount of time. At Halstead, I think it was every Wednesday or within 5 days or something. It was quick. But they started delaying their payments. Then on the one that I was just talking about on Irving Place, 33 Irving Place, Town's Union Square location. I'm sorry, that's their Union Square location. They were hit with a lawsuit that they owed $174,000 in unpaid rent. You don't need $174,000 in unpaid rent. The biggest thing when I was at Halstead that they touted was that we have office front. We have storefront, in other words, street front, office space. That's expensive, and it's not necessary at all. Why do you need that? In my 3 years at Halstead, there was no one that ever walked in on the street and said, I'm looking to buy a place. Yes, they did, but they were always tourists, or they were people that were just shopping. They were never real people, because real New Yorkers either work with an agent or they're on Street Easy. That's really what it comes down to. And I'll talk about the disruption in general, because now that I'm targeting this year for sell by owners, people that are selling on their own, I get all of the objections, and the objections are pretty much the same. Okay, there's two main objections. Obviously, they want to save on the compensation. That's just the minimum. If it was for free, obviously every broker would be employed. Okay, so when you're trying to save, you don't see the value of the agent, or you don't see the value that you're paying out, and that's why you're asking for a cancellation clause. I don't know why agencies don't have a cancellation clause. I didn't have one at Halstead. The two listings we're putting can't even talk. We're putting up one next week. And they were in a 6-month exclusive, no cancellation clause. This guy hates brokers, to say the least, but he's hiring me because he likes me, obviously. But it took a year to actually get that. And we'll sell it. And then the other one also was 6 months, no cancellation clause whatsoever. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, we couldn't get out of it. So they don't see the value in the agent. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Is if you don't see the value in anything, you're not going to buy that purse or that computer or that phone or that service or whatever the case is. So I see it as, first of all, in Manhattan in general, let's just go macro level. There were 12,000 transactions in 2016. 2017, there was 10,000. Obviously, this is roughly speaking. However, the amount of sales was the same. So the amount of transactions went down. So what does that mean? That means per agent, 2,000 out of 12,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a massive shift. So they're looking at the overhead is the same because you're signing a lease. The overhead is the same because you have the same amount of agents, okay? But the sales is down and you don't adjust. Sure enough, that 24%, it didn't start, like I said, with Town Residential. Town Residential is the first of many that I think are going to go out of business. Or they're going to merge because they can't support it, or they're going to let off agents and not have storefront office space, which is stupid. You know, the thing is, it's funny because this is probably a year. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm seeing it from the lens of a business owner, not from an agent. Yes, I'm an agent and I'm still producing and whatever, but from a business owner, I look at what they're paying and I'm looking at what I'm paying and I am nowhere near the size of these mega brokerages. Corcoran, Elliman, Compass, Brown, Harris, Stevens, Sotheby's, they're all fighting over a lower amount of business. And to be honest, I think commissions are going down. And listen, this isn't me, this is the marketplace. If you can add more value than me, you're going to be able to charge more. If you can add more value than me, you're going to get more business. That's how it is. But the thing is, because of the TV show, because of $1 Million Listing, people enter the marketplace and of Ryan and Frederick, that they don't see the hustle of them calling every single day, that they just are going to get a loft in Soho, and then it got flooded with agents. So there's about 32,000 agents. Look at this math. 32,000 agents, and you have 10,000 transactions, okay? And by the way, Pareto's principle, 80-20, applies. So 80% of the agents are fighting over 20% of the deals, and 20% of the agents are doing 80% of the deals, okay? So that means there's a lot of agents not doing any deals at all, okay? And I'm going to have an entire live, a hot topic next week, probably talking about Street Easy versus Real Estate Board of New York. I'm that one that's bringing transparency, and I'm saying, it shouldn't be this way. If you don't like your broker, here's the cancellation clause. We've never had it, but we have it. We've no owners needed to use it, but we have it in there. Cancel at any time. That's fine. You don't want 6 months? Cool. We'll do 3.5. And I know there's brokers out there that absolutely hate it. They hate it. But the thing is, if you keep on going with the old guard, you're going to be like Best Buy. You're going to be like Circuit City. You're just going to go. You don't think there's I forget, Tom Ferry mentioned there's some ridiculous amount of commissions paid per year. You don't think that Redfin and Zillow and all these corporations that are out there that are trying to disrupt the rest of the suburbs are not trying to do that to New York City? And I'll just make this thing on Street Easy as well, is that So the trend was that they wanted to save money, so the buyers would go directly to the sellers. That was in 2012, and that's when all the brokers were like, oh my God, this is crazy. We're going to be out of business. And I said, no, just get better. So that's when I started blogging. That's when I started doing video, and I was terrible at the time. Listen, I want to unleash some of the videos that I did. They were brutal. Oh, the property tours, I was so awkward on camera. I'll unleash those one time. And I was like, just get better. At the time, they didn't really like it because it wasn't cool. It wasn't normal. And then I, obviously went on my own. I could do whatever I want now. Social is huge. Video, if you don't have video, if you're not getting better at video, if you're not building an audience, if you don't have a newsletter, like, are you just relying on the MLS and on Street Easy? Like, come on. So this is the turning point with Street Easy is 2012. I would normally get a referral and they said, hey, listen, Susie is looking to buy a place, help her out, okay? And that was pre-2012. Then 2012, Street Easy started coming on the market and everything else, and they got bought out shortly thereafter, I think 2013, 2014, for $50 million. That's a steal, to say the least, and just like Instagram, but that's all in hindsight. Then, after Street Easy started getting popular, this is what I noticed is that people would come to me and they would say, Susie's been looking, she's been at open houses, she can't find what she wants, okay? So in other words, before it was like, let's talk to a professional and then go to open houses. It was the opposite. They went to open houses, didn't find what they wanted, and then talked to a professional. And that's when I said, holy cow, the industry is changing. This was 5 years ago. And if you're not adjusting, I'll say these two things as well. Obviously this is all ad-libbed, and this is all things that nobody wants to talk about. There's a lot of ego in real estate, okay? No crap, Charles. There's a lot of ego, okay? Ego in how many agents do I have? How nice is my office? How shiny are my listings, okay? Well, let's come down to the basic economics of P&L. What is your profit and what is your loss, okay? They came out with something. Elliman came in number 2 last year, okay, in the amount of business that they did. Corcoran was number 1, Elliman was number 2. And they did a ridiculous amount. I think it was, $5.5 billion, or it might have been more, right around $5.5 billion. If you reverse engineer and you say, okay, if they did $5.5 billion and say, call it 4%, 'cause some of them are direct deals, some of them are blah, 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 you're talking about a healthy profit of 180 to 200 million. And I have no idea. But just call it a healthy profit, healthy revenue of 180, call it 150 million, whatever, right around there. They made Q1 of 2017 $100,000 in profit. $100,000 in the first quarter of last year. Did they confirm that? No, it was written in the Real Deal. Maybe they confirmed it. I don't know. I have no idea. But that's insane. So you had almost revenue of, 150 divided by 4, $40 million. Just call it a flat rate of $40 million. So that means they spent $39,900,000. That's not buffering your coffer. And that's it. We're not in a recession right now. Okay? That wasn't an amazing year. And it's actually probably going to be less because a lot of that was new development. Okay? So they closed. 2017 was a massive new development year. I want to see the numbers for this year. So, and then this is also something very interesting. I was at a real estate conference and Pam Lieberman was talking. Pam Lieberman was was it Pam? I think it was. She was the president of Elliman. And she goes, I think she still is, unless she got moved aside. But she was up there and she's always been there and she's a staple within the industry. And she said something very interesting and I was surprised that she actually said it. She's a very straightforward speaker, her and Howard Lawberg. Howard Lawberg is the chairman of Elliman. And I liked it. I liked what she said. So she's talking to the Real Estate Board of New York, and I think the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, which is such a stupid thing. But anyway, she said something very interesting. She said, I look at everyone's books. So in other words, all the chairmen, all the presidents get together and they talk about what's going on. What's the, all the top brass at all the top companies get together. I don't know if they open up their books, but I can tell you right now that they talk about the numbers. And they said something very interesting. They said that they have seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of commissions and the amount of transactions per. And she said this. She goes, I look at all the books. She goes, I look at all the books, and right now, there are a lot of companies that are not doing well. And, whether she didn't reference Town Residential, but that's the reason, is that you put up this really shiny object. You don't want to draw attention to the negatives, which is getting sued, not paying rent, not paying commissions on time, having agents leave, having more competition in Compass. That's the thing, okay, is if we're not looking at that, you're going to get disrupted. And that's exactly what happened. So this is the first hot topic. I think, based on this, it's only going to go up from here. Nobody wants to talk about this. That's the thing, is like, am I a disruptor? No. But I just look at it and I just say, this is common sense. If you're a good leader, you have to say, okay, where are we going in the industry, but is this beautiful ride going to continue? No. It's not. This beautiful ride of massive commissions, great marketplace, 6%, 6 months, no cancellation clause is not going to last. All right. So profit and loss, and I'll talk about other things, as an actual business owner, I'm looking at it and I notice there's a certain amount of things that need to occur consistently to bring in business. It's all about the activities. It's not about the outcome. So this is the first one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Obviously, it's controversial. All those agents are somewhere else, and hopefully, obviously, we'll we'll have some other good topics, including Rebney versus the Street Easy. Have an awesome day, guys, and I will talk to you soon.